What happens when a friendship turns into a full-blown war? And it all plays out on reality TV. Martell, Holt and Marsau Scott's fight wasn't just drama, it was years of betrayal, secrets, and chaos that didn't end when the cameras stopped. Stick around, because the real story is way darker than anything you saw on screen. Reality TV thrives on conflict, but what viewers see is only the surface. The real damage often continues long after the cameras stop rolling. The fallout between Martell, Holt and Marsau Scott on love and marriage. Huntsville wasn't just a dramatic clip for ratings, it was the unraveling of a friendship that had been fraying for years. Each slight, each betrayal, added another brick to the wall between them, until it finally came crashing down. When Sunni Minx finally spoke out, the narrative surrounding Martell, Holt and Marsau Scott on love and marriage, Huntsville shifted dramatically. She didn't just recount the events as viewers had seen them on screen. She painted a vivid, intricate picture of tension that extended far beyond the polished, edited sequences broadcast to millions. To the casual audience, Martell and Marsau appeared unshakable, two accomplished black men balancing high-profile careers, thriving businesses, families, and the weight of public representation in Huntsville. On television, their camaraderie seemed effortless, their partnership strong. But as Sunni revealed, the reality was far more complex, fraught with emotional landmines, fragile alliances, and personal stakes that no camera could fully capture. Success, she explained, is a double-edged sword. While achievement brings respect, it also amplifies scrutiny. Every misstep is noticed, every rumor dissected, every personal choice analyzed under an unrelenting microscope. For Martell, the pressure was particularly acute. When whispers of an affair with Orion Curry began circulating, they quickly evolved into a full-blown media storm. Tabloid headlines and online speculation dominated social feeds. And instead of finding support from his inner circle, Martell felt a creeping sense of isolation. According to Sunni, Marsau's response was not just casual ribbing or teasing, it was a sustained, targeted barrage of shade. The comments, jokes, and subtle digs were deliberate, constant, and, in Martell's eyes, humiliating. What might have been perceived by outsiders as playful banter, Martell experienced as deep personal betrayal. The relationship that had once been a solid, brotherly bond was showing unmistakable cracks, fissures that threatened to fracture entirely. But the affair was only a piece of the puzzle. Sunni emphasized that the damage wasn't limited to gossip or scandal. It was the accumulation of small, corrosive moments over years. There was the silence when Martell sought advice or backup. The moments when Marsau's laughter in the green room carried a sharp edge aimed directly at him. The insidious jabs hidden within seemingly casual conversation. Each tiny instance added weight, eroding trust and deepening resentment. The erosion was subtle but relentless, like water slowly cracking stone. Martell could feel the pressure building, each slight stacking atop the last, creating a psychological landscape that was nearly impossible to navigate. The tipping point came in a moment that, in hindsight, seemed almost inevitable. Martell decided to bring Ariana onto the set without warning anyone. According to Sunni, this move shocked the cast. It was more than a disruption. It was a declaration. For Martell, it symbolized a refusal to continue operating under the invisible constraints that had been placed upon him. He was asserting agency, making it clear that he would no longer allow the drama to dictate the terms of his involvement or compromise his sense of self. Yet for Marsau, this action crossed a line. The act wasn't just inconvenient, it was a perceived attack, a challenge to his authority and composure in a setting where appearances were everything. In that instant, the divide became undeniable. Years of shared experiences, loyalty, and mutual respect gave way to a starkly different reality, a battleground of public scrutiny, private grievances, and emotional fallout. The cameras captured only fragments of the tension, but behind the scenes, the stakes were far higher. Martell and Marsau were no longer merely co-stars, they were adversaries in a psychological and social struggle, navigating a landscape where every word, glance, and gesture was loaded with meaning. Even moments of silence carried significance, interpreted as approval or condemnation depending on context. Trust, once a foundation of their relationship, had eroded to the point where every interaction was a negotiation, a careful calculation to avoid escalation or public embarrassment. Beyond the interpersonal tension, there was the ever-present awareness of audience perception. Reality TV exists in a paradoxical space where personal lives are both a commodity and a performance. Martell and Marsau were acutely aware that every interaction could be broadcast, scrutinized and immortalized in clips and headlines. The pressure to maintain composure while simultaneously defending oneself was exhausting. For Martell, the compounded stress of public judgment, private betrayal, and professional obligation created a nearly unbearable emotional load. Every conversation, every appearance became a minefield, with the potential to ignite a scandal or reinforce a narrative he was desperate to control. Sunni's account also highlighted the subtle dynamics of envy and ego that permeated their environment. Marsau, like many individuals operating in high-pressure public spaces, was skilled at managing appearances, projecting an air of humor and composure, but according to Sunni, that exterior masked a deep well of anger and frustration. Behind closed doors, Marsau was not laughing, he was furious, humiliated, and calculating. Each strategic comment, each seemingly innocuous jest, was a deliberate attempt to regain control of a narrative he perceived as slipping from his grasp. In this context, the personal grievances between Martell and Marsau cannot be disentangled from the professional pressures, media exposure, and broader expectations placed on them by the public. The ripple effects of this tension extended beyond the principal parties. Cast members, friends, and colleagues were caught in the crossfire, forced to navigate alliances, loyalties, and the ever-present threat of public misinterpretation. Group dynamics shifted overnight. Friendships that had seemed stable were tested. Private conversations were fraught with suspicion. Even casual comments were analyzed for hidden meaning. The microcosm of the show mirrored the larger reality of life under scrutiny. Small choices carried outsized consequences, and the line between personal and professional became increasingly blurred. In expanding the narrative to include the psychological and social dimensions, it becomes clear that the Martell-Marsau conflict was not merely a series of isolated incidents. It was a complex interplay of ambition, pride, betrayal, and the relentless gaze of the public. Every slight, every rumor, every strategic decision contributed to a tension that was as much internal as it was external. Martell's decision to act bringing Ariana onto the set was both a catalyst and a symptom. A reflection of his growing frustration with the confines of performance and expectation. It forced the fissures into the open, making what had been latent and subtle painfully visible. Ultimately, the story Sunni told underscores a crucial reality of life in the public eye. What happens behind the cameras can be far more consequential than what audiences ever see. Relationships are tested, reputations are at stake, and emotional fallout can reverberate for years. Martell and Marsau's situation serves as a powerful reminder that success, visibility, and accomplishment do not shield individuals from the vulnerabilities inherent in human connection, even in an environment designed for entertainment. The real drama, the emotional, relational, and psychological complexity often unfolds in ways the public never fully witnesses. The divide between Martell and Marsau, illuminated through Sunni's perspective, is not merely a tale of reality TV conflict. It is a study of trust, betrayal, and resilience under pressure. It shows how personal relationships can fracture under the weight of public scrutiny, how minor slights accumulate into major fractures, and how acts intended to assert control or express individuality can be interpreted as provocations or betrayals. In the end, it is a cautionary tale. Behind every edited scene, every dramatic confrontation, lies a far more intricate human story, one that challenges assumptions and reveals the profound cost of living life under a lens that never looks away. Martell had reached his breaking point. He was done staying quiet, but Marsau saw it differently. To him, Martell's move screamed disrespect, and he didn't mince words. He called it unprofessional, selfish, and reckless, accusing Martell of dragging everyone into his personal chaos and jeopardizing the show for the sake of his pride. For Martell, it wasn't just a critique, it was a personal attack. He was already under siege. Public shame, marital fallout, and whispers spreading through town like wildfire. And now, his so-called brother was calling him out on national television, painting him as the villain of the season. Cornered and exposed, Martell didn't retreat. He retaliated, not with fists, at least not yet, but with words sharpened to inflict maximum damage. According to Sunni Minx, Martell went after Marsau's public image with surgical precision, and he didn't spare Letitia either. Much of what he said never made it on air. Producers cut heavily, though Sunni insisted too much was censored. What did air, however, was enough for viewers to understand. This wasn't scripted reality TV drama. This was raw, real, unfiltered pain erupting on camera. And the conflict didn't start there. Sunni described the fight as the culmination of years of tension, side-eye glances, petty jokes, quiet betrayals that had slowly chipped away at their bond. It only took one last spark for the situation to explode. But the real chaos, that happened after the cameras stopped rolling. Martell moved quickly. Within days of the explosive confrontation, he launched a counterattack, an exclusive interview with a woman, claiming a long-term affair with Marsau. She arrived not with vague hints, but with screenshots, alleged evidence, and stories eerily mirroring mistakes Martell himself had faced public backlash for. Online reactions were intense. The timing was deliberate, calculated. Martell wanted Marsau to feel exactly what he had: exposed, ridiculed, humiliated. And it didn't stop there. Cryptic posts began appearing on Martell's social media: wine glasses, vague references to hidden truths, subtle tags pointing at Letitia, Marsau's wife. Letitia, who had always stood firmly by Marsau, now found herself dragged into the crossfire. Initially graceful, she soon felt the mounting pressure. Martell wasn't just attacking Marsau, he was destabilizing the foundation around him. The rest of the cast was caught in the storm. Morris, Marsau's brother, tried to mediate, as he always did, calm, neutral, diplomatic, but it was nearly impossible. The show had shifted from entertainment to a battlefield. Alliances once assumed unshakable were crumbling, and the energy on set changed overnight. Forced smiles, stiff interactions, tension palpable in every scene. Even the producers struggled to contain the fallout. But trying to control it felt like attempting to stop a hurricane with duct tape. Then came the whispers of footage. According to Sunni Minx or Marcelo, as some referred to him, claimed to have damaging material on Martell, something that could ruin his reputation permanently. The specifics were unclear. A private video, a recorded conversation. No one knew. Martell never publicly addressed it, but those close to him say it rattled him more than he let on. The threat wasn't just personal, it was nuclear, forcing Martell back into a corner. Facing the fury of a battle he thought he was already winning. This time, Martell wasn't under attack because of public shame, he was trapped by someone else's control. Letitia stayed silent. Too silent. Some fans speculated she didn't believe the rumors. Others thought she was quietly planning her next move. But whatever the reason, her silence spoke louder than any statement could. Meanwhile, Marsau leaned into his element, spinning the narrative with practiced ease. Interviews, statements, even shady Instagram lives, he played the chaos like a pro, cracking jokes and acting But Sunni revealed a different side behind the cameras. He was furious, mortified, and determined to end Martell once and for all. The tension escalated until even private moments became public fodder. Behind-the-scenes arguments were recorded, conversations leaked, and uncut clips circulated online. The show was no longer just a series, it was a 24/7 spectacle. Producers scrambled to regain control, but it was too late. This wasn't a feud anymore. It had become a full-blown war, drawing in families, fans, and the entire network. Meetings were called, contracts scrutinized, and debates raged over whether reality TV ethics had finally been breached. But the ratings told their own story. Viewers were glued to the screen, waiting to see who would crack next. Behind the cameras, the fallout spread quickly. Melody, Sherry, once the calm anchor in the storm, found herself caught in the middle. She tried to stay neutral, focusing on her own storyline, but history with both Martell and Marsau made neutrality impossible. Every word she spoke was dissected, every silence interpreted as support for one side or the other. Other cast members walked a similar tightrope. Friendships strained, group chats died, phone calls stopped. No one knew who was recording whom or what would become the next viral moment. Trust was gone. Martell, for all his fury, began showing cracks. The constant battles, online noise, and pressure to defend himself while maintaining his role as a father and rebuilding his image were wearing him down. He started missing shoots, his energy waning. The fire was still there, but dimmed, a warrior exhausted by a war he never wanted. Marsau, in contrast, doubled down. He was present at every event, smiling, laughing, acting unaffected, but Sunni noted the cracks beneath the performance. His jokes carried an edge, his interviews felt defensive. He wasn't rising above the chaos. He was just trying not to drown in it. Letitia eventually spoke, but carefully, not on camera, not through a fiery social media rant, and not in some impulsive live stream. She chose her words with precision, delivering them in a calm, controlled interview that managed to say everything without saying much at all. It wasn't damage control, it was preservation. Letitia understood that in a world where perception was currency, silence could be more powerful than any statement. She didn't confirm the mistress rumors, Nor did she outright deny them. Instead, she redirected the narrative, speaking on broader truths, loyalty, privacy, and the emotional toll of turning real lives into televised entertainment. Some things, she said softly, don't need to be performed for the world to understand them. It was a quiet but deliberate assertion of dignity. Her tone wasn't defensive, it was measured, layered with the kind of strength that comes from knowing how fragile reputations can be. Her words resonated. Fans, commentators, and cast members alike recognized that her silence wasn't weakness, it was restraint. It was her way of reclaiming control in a situation designed to strip it away. And yet, for all her composure, the interview sent ripples through the community. Was she hinting at forgiveness? At betrayal? The ambiguity fueled more speculation than a confession ever could. Then came the unexpected twist, one that turned the spotlight onto someone who never intended to be part of the show's central narrative. Sunni Minx, who had started out as a voice of commentary, an observer piecing together fragments of behind-the-scenes truth, suddenly became part of the story herself. It started subtly. A few fans began tagging her in posts, thanking her for shedding light on what they suspected all along, that the on-screen version of events barely scratched the surface. Her insight gave depth to what had previously felt like gossip, but the attention grew rapidly, evolving into both praise and backlash. For every supporter who applauded her honesty, there was another accusing her of exploiting the chaos to build her own platform. Sunni pushed back, hard. She reminded everyone that she hadn't inserted herself into the narrative, she'd been pulled into it. Silence protects no one, she said in a follow-up interview, her tone calm but firm. People forget that these aren't just characters on TV. These are real lives unraveling in real time. Still, the damage was done. Her objectivity was questioned, her motives dissected. And as the conversation spiraled online, it became clear that in the world of reality television, even truth-tellers are fair game. By the time the season finale aired, tension had reached a fever pitch. It was everything the network could have hoped for: explosive, emotional, unfiltered. The episode trended within hours. Social media feeds flooded with clips, memes, and reaction videos. Viewers dissected every expression, every pause, every unfinished sentence. But even as the drama unfolded on screen, longtime fans sensed something deeper. This wasn't the full story. There were too many cuts, too many silences, too many moments that felt rehearsed or edited beyond recognition. The real story, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the quiet unraveling of years of friendship had happened where the cameras couldn't go. In the off-screen spaces, in the late-night phone calls that went unanswered, in the text messages that turned into evidence, in the way trust evaporated, leaving only suspicion in its wake. Behind the scenes, cast members were emotionally drained. Some were considering stepping away altogether. Others were locked in negotiations, arguing over what footage could and couldn't air. The producers, meanwhile, were struggling to contain the chaos they had helped create. The show, once built on the premise of showcasing Black excellence, ambition, and love in Huntsville, had become something else entirely, a mirror reflecting the darker side of ambition, ego, and fame. And in the middle of it all stood Martell and Marsau, two men who had once dreamed together of building something lasting, and empire that represented brotherhood, business, and legacy. Their bond had been the backbone of the show's early success. They weren't just co-stars. They were symbols of unity and ambition in a space where representation mattered deeply. But now, that image lay shattered. The reunion loomed like a storm cloud, inevitable, charged, impossible to avoid. Fans buzzed with speculation. Would they confront each other, apologize, fight, or sit in silence, letting the weight of everything unsaid speak for itself? The cast felt it too. The energy was uneasy, heavy with the awareness that whatever happened next could either repair something broken or destroy it forever. What made the situation even more tragic was how public it had all become. The world had watched the unraveling of a friendship that once symbolized strength. And while fame could elevate, it could also expose the rawest parts of human nature: the insecurities, the jealousy, the fear of being replaced, the pain of betrayal. For Martell and Marsau, the cost of visibility was not just their reputations, it was their relationship, their trust, their shared dream. Sunni later reflected on it in an interview that went viral for its honesty. People think reality TV is about showing the truth, she said. But what they don't understand is that the real truth lives in the parts they don't show. The moments when the cameras stop rolling. That's where the story actually happens. As the final episode's credits rolled, a haunting question lingered among fans and cast alike. Could Martell and Marsau ever find their way back? Not just as television partners, not just as business associates, but as men who once stood side by side, believing they could change the narrative of black success in the South. Reality TV had given them a platform. But it had also stripped them bare. Their victories became public property, their failures, entertainment. What began as a show about love and ambition had turned into a lesson about exposure, about how fame doesn't just magnify who you are. It tests who you are when the world decides to watch you fall. And perhaps that was the most painful truth of all. Once trust is broken in public, once your wounds are broadcast for the world's amusement, rebuilding becomes almost impossible, because fame doesn't forget, the internet doesn't forgive, and sometimes, in chasing visibility, you lose more than your privacy, you lose your people. The story of Martell, Marsau, and Letitia wasn't just about scandal. It was about the human cost of being seen, about what happens when friendship collides with fame, when loyalty meets ego, and when the quest for success leaves no room for grace. It was, in the end, a cautionary tale dressed as entertainment, a reminder that behind every reality lies a reality far too painful for television.